Before we dive in, this week's episode is brought to you by my free cheat sheet, 30 Top Tips to Find Time to Write. In this guide, I give you 30 ways that you can find time to write in the small gaps that appear between the various errands and tasks and responsibilities that you have in your day-to-day life. Now, you might be thinking that you don't have any time to spare, but I can guarantee these top tips will give you writing time you didn't think you had. If you thought writing always involved a pen and paper or a keyboard, think again. If you thought you needed at least an hour at a time to write your manuscript, I help you reframe that. You won't be disappointed. Get your free copy of 30 Top Tips to Find Time to Write by going to emmadesi.com/30 top tips. Okay, let's dive in to today's episode. Helen Taylor is the author of the novel The Back Streets of Purgatory. Her work has appeared in Boundless magazine, Product magazine, Poetry Scotland, and as part of the Unmother project at the Brighton Fringe in 2021. Before becoming a writer, she was a doctor and a research scientist, but suffered a catastrophic episode of major depression, during which she was sectioned under the Mental Health Act and which changed her life forever. Her new memoir, Love Lay Down Beside Me and We Wept, is a raw account of the devastating and comical aspects of life in a psychiatric ward, of memory loss and of the vagaries of the human mind and the human body. And of course, how lost a person can be inside their own head. But this is also a remarkable story of unwavering love. The book is currently crowdfunding at unbound.com. And today, Helen shares with me why she decided to write this memoir, which is so personal, what's come of it, and why it's so important to her, not just for herself and putting her experiences down on the page, but why it's so important for us as a community to be aware of what's going on. So join us for an amazing conversation where she really opens up and hopefully will give you the courage and inspiration to write your own memoir. All right, let's get listening. Well, Helen, it's so lovely to have you back again. You were kindly a guest on the podcast a little while ago now, talking about your first book. And here we are back again talking about your first memoir, which I'm very excited to chat about. But for those listeners who maybe didn't hear the first episode with you or aren't aware of your work, I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about your journey to writing and where you are now.
So thank you. First of all, thank you for having me. So my journey to writing, I'm one of these people that's always written bits and pieces, but I was a medic and a research scientist, didn't leave a lot of room for creative writing. I do it often for myself a little bit, wrote a lot of technical stuff. But actually my writing journey is tied in quite closely with the story of my mental health, because I was really unwell and ended up giving up my work. And then I was like, right, what should I do? I'd always wanted to be a writer. It was like it was a doctor or a writer. I thought, okay, this is my chance. So I started doing some courses, started with an Open College of Arts course and then a couple of Open University modules. And then I did an MA, and the MA project formed the basis of my novel, The Back Streets of Purgatory, which was published in 2018, which is quite a long time ago now. It feels really recent because of the crazy last couple of years. And that was published with Unbound. And since then, I've been writing. I wrote my memoir, which we're going to talk about today. I've got another novel in progress. I've got several other novels that have been started and abandoned, but the one that's in progress is going to go places because I really love it. So that's basically fantastic. That's basically my writing journey.
And remind me who you did your MA with.
I did it with Lancaster Uni. It was because I live in France. There weren't many places that did a distance learning one, and that was one that did. Mm-hmm. And I also liked it because it was over 2 years. So it gives you a little bit more time to really think about your project. So my portfolio ended up being my part of my novel, but actually my first long project that I did with them was a screenplay. But then when I had the idea for my novel, I was like, right, this is what I want to do. And I had enough time in the 2 years to kind of change my direction a little bit. So that was good.
And it's interesting, isn't it, how one project can come along and you just kind of know, this could be the one that's worth pursuing and going with, and making that switch, say, from screenplay to novel, knowing, just feeling it in your gut that this is the right move.
Yeah, totally. When I had the idea for Back Streets of Purgatory, I just had such a wave of excitement that I'd stumbled on something that I really was so excited about doing. And then my characters came alive to me really quickly. And once that happened, it just, I was going to say it wrote itself. It didn't. Of course it didn't. But I knew that was a book that I was supposed to be writing. And interestingly, the same things happened with the new novel that I'm writing, is that I've reached that stage where the characters have come alive. And I don't feel that it's me writing. I feel that I'm channeling what they've got to tell me. And it's just such a fantastic feeling. I love it.
So lovely. And it's certainly one thing that you do very well. If no one's read The Back Streets of Purgatory, they should. It's amazing. I loved it, and you do characters so brilliantly. They're very deep. They've got so many layers. And I'd hope you don't mind me saying this, but one of the things I love about them is they're not always that likable. You know, you managed to do that really well.
Yeah, I know. Like, there's quite a few people didn't particularly like Finn, my main character in Backstreets, but I totally recognise that a lot of them are flawed, but I still have a really deep fondness for all of them, for their flaws and everything. And sometimes they behaved so badly that felt out of my control, but it was brilliant. Like, I'm a planner. I plan to the zillionth degree, and write, I write chapter plans, I write scene plans. Before I start a chapter, I'm like, what's going to be in this chapter? What's the shape of it? And then something will happen. I'm like, well, that took me by surprise.
That's the magic, though, isn't it? I love it when that happens. Yeah, but no. I mean that you manage to write dislikable characters in a positive way, because they are flawed, which makes them so much more interesting. And you still get involved in them. And what are they going to do next? And how can they behave even worse than they've already done? But I still find myself rooting for them. I thought it was brilliantly done. So I applaud you for your flawed characters. But yes, so let's move on to your memoir. And I'm curious to know, what was it that prompted you to make that switch from literary fiction to memoir? Because it's quite a change, isn't it?
It wasn't a planned switch at all. It really wasn't deliberate. I was actually, as I say, I was writing another novel, one of the ones that has kind of got stopped because I wasn't completely into it. I had already written an essay as part of my Open University course. For one of the modules, we had to do a creative non-fiction piece, and it was about being in psychiatric hospital. And when I gave it to my tutor, to be marked, she said really lovely things and said to me that I should share it, because although it was an individual experience to me, like in some ways it was a kind of universal, it touched on universal themes, but I wasn't well enough at the time to share it. It was still too raw, and I was too vulnerable to put that out there, I think. So I sat on it for ages and ages. And then, as I say, I was writing another novel, and then I saw a Channel 4 news piece about the Mental Health Act, and I listened to the people that were being interviewed, and although they were all really different from one another and different from me, and our stories and our diagnoses were different, some of their experiences just were so recognizable about about how it feels to have your freedom taken away, about not being treated like you're human almost. And I just thought, do you know what? This is a time, now that I'm well, this is a time for me to share it. And so I did. So it was published by Boundless magazine, which is associated with Unbound. And I had the most amazing response to it. And a lot of people asking me, like, what happened next? Can we hear the rest of the story? And at first I thought, oh, maybe I'll write it as fiction. So I tried writing a sort of fictionalized version, and it didn't work. And then I was just like, I just have to write it. But even at that point, I didn't know whether I wanted to try and get it published or not. But actually, I guess that gave me a bit of freedom. So I just wrote it. I have memory loss problems because of the ECT treatment that I had and some of the other things that happened to me. And so I was really aware that it might not all be strictly time true and everything. But I had also kept notes while I was in hospital. I kept a journal.
Oh, did you?
Journal. Yeah. And I had loads of letters as well from people who'd written to me. So I used those to kind of guide, to make sure that, like, the time wise it was right. But I figured that all I could do was write my emotional truth, which is what I've done. I mean, I haven't made stuff up. I've changed everybody's name, including my husband's, because I needed a bit of distance to be able to write it and step back from myself a bit. Yeah. But everything in there is true as I remember it.
Yeah, as is any memoir. Yes. I guess truth comes from, we all have our own truths about what happens in our life, even two people in the same room. And so I remember listening to an interview with Tara. Yes. And her sort of talking about, this was her truth. This is how she remembered events. Yeah. And of course, family members remember things slightly differently. Yeah. And so interesting that you were taking notes or journaling whilst you were in the hospital. Was that for you, an important part of your recovery?
I think it wasn't to do with that. I think there was well, maybe it was. There was so much going on that I didn't understand what was happening to me, and so a lot of it was that sort of therapeutic writing. A lot of it is really hard to read. It's just I was suicidal. It was just like I just want to die, and it's really hard. Mm-hmm. But also, I think because I didn't know if I was going to survive it, I think some of it was for people to read if I didn't survive it.
Right. Okay. Gosh, so lots behind it then.
Yeah. And I wonder whether there was a part of me that thought maybe it will be something that I'll write about in the future. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It wasn't a conscious thing. It definitely wasn't a conscious thing, because at that point writing wasn't on my horizon. Uh-huh. But I do wonder whether there was kind of, at some level, there was that as well.
Yeah. Yes, the universe works in strange ways, doesn't it? And sometimes you can look back and make those connections. So what can you tell us about the memoir and your time there?
Well, this is my it's a memoir about depression and the dark places it can take you, which doesn't exactly sound the cheeriest of books. I maybe need to change my pitch a little bit, but actually, it's about the struggles that I've had with depression. I've had them throughout my adult life, but they came to a head after I had a miscarriage of an IVF baby.
Right.
And then had a rapid deterioration. And so it's about the story leading up to that. It's about my time in the psychiatric ward and then about what happened after that as well. Mm-hmm. But it isn't all doom and gloom, even though it's depression and mental health. It's a love story too. Like, love is infused through my book. The love of my husband, the way that he was there for me, and of my family and my friends. So that's like a really, really crucial part of the book. And it's also funny. If anybody who's spent time on a psychiatric ward will know that it can be, I mean, it can be the most awful place to be, but it can be the most hilarious place to be. There's a lot of dark humour.
I can imagine, because you would need it in there, especially if you had some sense of insight about what was going on and where you were. Then you would need that dark humor. It's very different, I know, but I'm thinking about Marion Keyes's book, Rachel's Holiday, which is fiction, but it is based on alcoholism and addiction, and she goes to rehab. And again, it's a dark place to be. The character clearly is not in a good state whatsoever. But it's finding those lighter moments, finding that those humorous moments that kind of keep the character going and keep the days from getting too dark. Yeah. And I wonder if there was a little bit of that for you at the time, or perhaps just looking back.
No, there definitely was at the time. I formed some really good relationships with a couple of the nurses who were like my one-to-one nurses, one in particular. We used to have a laugh, like proper laugh. Like, this was me. Like, I didn't eat, I didn't sleep, I was drugged up to the eyeballs, and yet still somehow or other we could have a laugh. It's weird. It's
human survival, isn't it? I think
bizarre,
it's part of human. Yeah. And the title of the book, give us the title and tell us where did that come from?
So the title is Love Lay Down Beside Me and We Wept. And it comes from a line in the middle of the book. And I'm describing a scene just after I've had the miscarriage, and I'm about to leave London. We left London weeks later for me to go and start a new job in Glasgow. And the house, our flat is empty. The cat's just been taken outside, and I hear her squeal, and it sounds like the squeal of an infant. And I just give in to grief and love. Sorry. Occasionally, these things make me cry. I don't know if you read Nick Cave's Red Hand Files. They're brilliant. I recommend them to everybody. They're like amazing pieces of philosophy and life lessons. And people write in and ask questions. And somebody wrote in and asked him a question about a specific song lyric and what did it mean. And he was talking about how some song lyrics or some lines of poetry or lines of prose can have, like, the literal meaning is not, it doesn't entirely make sense, but their sort of poetic deeper meaning makes exact sense. And this was a line. It just came to me. It was just like, this is what is happening to me. And yeah.
So that felt right. Yeah. So we've talked sort of on and off briefly over the years about your experiences in the psychiatric unit. And I was curious to know if that, first of all, I'm never quite sure whether it was a positive or a negative experience, or if it was a mixture of both. But also I'm wondering if that experience either changed your view of yourself or even the world around you, and did it facilitate do you feel that it did facilitate your recovery?
I think it was a negative experience. I think it was a really hard thing to go through, hard thing for anybody to go through. It's something, especially if you're sectioned, something inside you fundamentally changes when your freedom's taken away. I was so angry, I was raging against everybody involved. But in retrospect, I understand that it was for my own safety. I am sure that the experience has changed me. I definitely think, like, because I have like a medical background and I did psychiatry as a medical student, like the life inside the psychiatric ward wasn't entirely foreign to me, but from the other side, you know. And I do think that as doctors, we have a tendency to look at our patients through their diagnoses, not just psychiatric patients, but, you know, would be like, oh, that's the appendicitis in bed 2, or the pyelonephritis in bed 6, or the heart attack or whatever. It's a sort of shorthand. And I think that the experience of being on the other side of it made me see that is what can happen.
So do you feel that it was just that removal of your liberties there, or do you think being in the unit, do you think have been, looking back, would have been easier if you'd felt the staff were more, or the system was more understanding and treated you more as an individual rather than just a patient?
I don't want to criticize all of the staff, because there were some absolutely amazing staff, some people who really were just brilliant, but there were some people who weren't, and who treated us as if we weren't human. There were things like, there was one really nice guy who said to me one day, oh, how are you doing, Helen? And one of the other nurses said to me, oh, don't talk to them like that, they'll think you give a F.
Right. Wow. Okay.
So I think that what it's done is really, really reinforced to me that I have to make sure that I never fall for that them and us. Like, there isn't a divide. Anybody can end up in the situation that I ended up. Like, I think it's really, really important. And I think it's really good. I'm going to be teaching a workshop on writing about mental health. And I think that as writers as well, those sort of lessons are really helpful for my writing. Like, if I have a character who's got a mental illness or a personality disorder, like, that isn't who they are. That is part of who they are. In some cases, it might feel to them that's all they are, because it can be so overwhelming, but it's not. Like, everybody's human. And, you know, it sounds really basic, and something that, of course, I did know before I went in, but I think it just reinforced it.
What I find is, I was just going to say, you said something earlier about how you, at the time, you didn't understand what was going on. And I imagine that felt very scary. And one of the things that came to me was, my goodness, well, here you are, a medic, an educated person within the medical system, and you're still feeling scared and like you don't know what's going on. For someone who doesn't have that education, doesn't have that insight, that must be triple, you know, that kind of feeling of loss.
Yes. Yeah, no, it must be horrendous. It was odd. I felt really fraudulent in some ways. I was like, what am I doing here? There's nothing wrong with me. And yet I know that if I had looked at myself from the outside through my medical eyes, I would have seen how unwell I was. But I knew how a ward worked. Like, I knew about ward rounds. I say that actually, but I didn't know, like, how the day-to-day life, like actually living in a place, worked. So that was a real insight. But it must be terrifying. It was.
And so your experience then, it's obviously changed you in very profound ways. Do you feel, you know, has it changed now that you're well again, has it changed how you think that mental health should be managed, dealt with, how people suffering with mental health should be helped? Do you think there's still a place for psychiatric units, or should
yeah, there definitely is. I don't have, like, although I have quite a lot of I say quite a lot of critical things about the way that I was treated. Overall, I think that most of the people there were doing their best for me. I think that this is still a long way to go in terms of medical treatment for different psychiatric illnesses. I think that maybe not all the time inpatient care isn't always the best thing. Mm-hmm. I think in some ways I was really lucky, actually, because when I came out of hospital, there was a lot of services. Like there was an outpatient sort of intensive care unit where I went there regularly for help. I had brilliant community psychiatric nurse who I saw quite a lot. I think all these services are getting cut. And I think that, there's just not the same availability. And I think the strain on staff is becoming more and more. People are understaffed. They don't have enough qualified people on the wards. It's an awful situation, and it's to do with underfunding and things. I don't want my book to be like an attack on psychiatric services. Mm-hmm. I know that I was angry and upset when I was in there, but I wasn't well. And I know that there were some people who did not do a brilliant job and treated us pretty rubbish, but there are a lot of people there doing a fantastic job or doing their best in really difficult circumstances. Mm-hmm. It's challenging.
Yeah. I think that's been highlighted, hasn't it, over the last couple of years, not just with psychiatric health, but with all of those frontline services. Yeah. It's a hard job. And then if you're understaffed and underfunded, it's even harder. And people at the end of the day are human and are going to get it right some days, I suppose, and wrong other days.
Yeah.
And so as we've kind of chatted, it's very clear this is a hugely, hugely personal experience, very personal memoir. And in your talking to people like myself and others, do you feel that there's still a stigma around mental health and that we still don't understand it properly? And I wondered if you worried at all about letting people into this part of your life, even with that distance between now and when it happened.
I think that there is still a stigma. I think it's getting a lot better. I think there are certain areas where there's still a lot of shame and misunderstanding, and certain diagnoses like some sort of less respectable diagnoses like schizophrenia and personality disorders. I also think suicide is a huge taboo, and there are a lot of myths around it. And I do think that it's important to talk about some of these things because people get stuck if they can't talk about it, and things won't change. When I wrote the memoir, I wasn't even sure I was trying to get it published. So I think I wrote with candor and a sort of freedom of not really knowing whether anybody would ever read it. I was really nervous about it. I think I've never hidden particularly what happened to me, but again, I don't go around shouting about it either. I think I've reached the point where if somebody judges me in a bad way for it, I actually don't care. I think that I've had so many amazing messages of support and other people reaching out to me with similar stories that I feel is a subject that's really resonating in these times, especially in these times. I think I'm trying not to be ashamed of it. I have regrets. Like I think I do feel shame and regret that I don't do the job that I was trained for, that I'm not a medic or a scientist anymore. But also I think I have really learned, or I'm trying to persuade myself that I'm more than the job that I do. And so, so I think all of these sort of things come into it. And there's also there's quite a lot, this is the thing I said, I wrote it not thinking that I'm not sure if anybody would read it. There's quite a lot of the kind of physical side of the way that your body just lets you down in so many ways, embarrassing ways.
Oh, you have to give us an example.
Oh God, like I was on lithium, and lithium just makes you so constipated. It's just like all these sort of stuff, like and just the saga of how to deal with that, and it becomes, it's maybe I should have given a toilet warning before I brought that up.
No, but I think, we don't think about these things. For those of us who've not had this experience, and we don't know what goes on, and we don't know the side effects of many of these medications, then it's an education for us as much as perhaps a funny anecdote for you to share with us as well. But this is how we learn, is by very brave people like yourself being willing to share these things with us. And I love, and just the fact that you've said, you've had a lot of positive response and a lot of people sharing their own examples of what's happened to them, shows that this is, as you said, yes, your experience is specific to you, but it does cover those universal themes of liberty, of feeling out of control, of recovery as well, and re-entering the wider world almost as a new person, with good and bad. Obviously the kind of experiences that a person has then will impact the way they view the world going out and themselves and what they can achieve going forward.
Quite a few people have said to me, "Oh, I think it's really brave that you've done this," but I don't actually feel brave. I think that the people who are brave in my story are my friends and family who came to visit me in hospital when I was physically almost a person they didn't recognize, and I was so lost and so unwell, and it was the people who came week in, week out when it was so painful for them. They're the people in my story who are brave, I think.
I think that idea of bringing love into your pitch, as you say, and that actually this being a love story through dark times is a testament to that. So you published your first book, The Backstreets of Purgatory, via the publisher Unbound, and you've chosen to go with Unbound again. What is it that you like about working with them that made you go back?
Well, Unbound work on a crowdfunding model, which basically means that that readers decide which books get published by pledging for their support for them in advance. It gives them Unbound freedom to publish books that are a bit more left field or a bit more challenging. I feel that publishers are becoming more and more conservative in what they're prepared to publish, big name authors and celebrities, because they'll guarantee sales. And so Unbound have a bit more freedom to do that. The crowdfunding is hard work, but it is also a really positive experience too, because like I said, I've been in touch with loads of people. I've had loads of amazing messages. Also, the people that I don't know who've supported me, it's such a lovely feeling. You feel really close to your potential readers, and because there's a blog on the Unbound site, there's a way of interacting with people. It feels very involved. I feel very involved with the readers, and also in how the book will be. I have involvement in the cover and things like that, and I'm working with a fantastic team, Fiona Lensfeld and Rachel Kerr, who edited Backstreets for me, so I'm really looking forward to working with her on editing this one. The other good thing about Unbound is that apart from the crowdfunding model, in all other respects, they work like a traditional publisher. So they have a brilliant editing and covers things, and great distribution around. So Backstreets was in like bookshops up and down the country and stuff like that. So So hopefully this one will be too.
Yes, it's nice to have that. I didn't realize that you did get a say in the design and look and feel of the book as well, because it's a funny thing, isn't it? But that's really important to a lot of writers. And when I've spoken to people kind of over the years, it's like, no, I've got this really clear image in my head of what this cover is going to look like. And if a publisher doesn't like it, I'm going to tell them what for.
No, it's a collaborative process. I mean, we work with the designer and say like what we feel like like, and you know, what things we like, what things we don't like. I had quite a clear vision of having a bird on the front. So the cover that's on the Unbound site at the moment is just a temporary cover, but it's absolutely gorgeous. I don't think it will be so different from the final one.
Yeah, I've funnily enough, I've supported a few books through Unbound, and memoirs. I don't know why, but certainly memoirs have been the ones that I've supported.
Actually, that's what I wanted to say. That was one of the other reasons that I chose to go with Unbound, is because they have got such a good reputation for nonfiction and memoir, and especially mental health. So.
Yeah, well, actually, the other one of the other ones is about mental health. That's so funny. And I just as a recipient of Unbound books, they're beautiful quality as well. They come really, really well put together, really beautifully crafted. The covers are gorgeous, so it's, as an object, it's a beautiful thing to have. So, I urge people to check them out. So as you've said, you're currently crowdfunding for your new memoir. And so why do you feel people should support and fund this book? Difficult question, I know.
Well, you know, I obviously I would love this to be funded for my own sake because I wrote it. But really that's not why I'm doing it. This is a sort of book that I think is really gonna help people. I think it's gonna help people who've been through a similar situation to feel seen and understood. I really hope that's really what I hope, and families and friends who have been witness to it. But also, I think that people who haven't had any experience of this, although I don't think there are that many people these days who haven't been touched in some way by mental illness. I just really hope that it kind of increases understanding. It feels really important to me. I think that's why I'm able to do the crowdfunding, actually, because it feels something outside of me. It feels like it has an important message.
Yeah, absolutely. I've certainly got that feeling from you as you've been speaking today, that this wasn't necessarily a conscious decision. This was a calling.
Yeah.
This was something that you had to bring to the world and share and be part of that conversation around mental health.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I certainly urge our listeners to go and at the very least go and check out the Unbound, your Unbound page, which we will link to. I don't know if you know the link off by heart, or
it's unbound.com, and then it's love laid down beside me and we wept, with hyphens in between. But probably the easiest way to do it at the moment, it's trending on the front page if you do go to Discover. But also the other way to do it is to search for me as Helen Taylor or Helen Murray Taylor.
Okay.
And then you'll find it.
Fabulous. And I'll obviously be linking to that as well in the show notes. So everybody go and check those out. Now I should say, when someone supports you, when someone helps you with crowdfunding, they get a little something in return to say thank you. So you've got different tiers, haven't you? What's included in the different tiers?
Yeah, so you basically you pledge for a book, but you can get signed books, you can get workshops. There's a writing workshop to pledge for. There's a book club to pledge for, where I can come to yours, probably by Zoom because I live in France. And do a Zoom book club with you. There were a couple of hand bound specialist copies. Binder copies, but they've gone.
Ooh, yeah. Lovely. Oh, that's a real treat to have something.
Yeah, I have a lovely friend who is an artisan binder, and she's going to do a couple of special hand sewn, hand bound ones.
Oh, what a skill to have! How beautiful!
Oh, I know. Yeah, they're really beautiful. And the other thing, of course, apart from having my eternal gratitude, you also get your name listed in the back as a contributor, and the pledge for the book buys your own book, but it also goes towards helping the trade copies be printed and distributed, and your name is in the trade copies as well. So
I didn't know that.
It's lovely. I've supported quite a few unbound books, and I love seeing my name in the back. You feel like you're part of a community.
Yeah, and really helping writers get out there and get their work into the world, which we all need. Yeah. We all need that little helping hand. Well, we're coming to the end of our time. I wasn't going to ask you about what you're working on now, because I thought your head will be so full of your memoir. But can you give us a gist of what the new story is that's calling you?
Yeah, it is on hold because it's too difficult to crowdfund and write at the same time. But it's a story. I haven't got my pitch for this one, you see.
Is it set in the UK, or are you in France now?
It's a story set in the northeast of Scotland, where I was brought up. It's the story of a grandmother telling her life story backwards through her marriages to her daughter, who she's not so happy with, to try and explain to her daughter why she made the choices in her life that she made. But as she does, she uncovers some of the secrets in her life.
Oh, good. A bit of intrigue as well. Yeah. I love mother-daughter stories, particularly, you get older and you realize that all the things we criticize our own mothers about, as a grown woman, you kind of start making you realize that you're a little bit more patient with why they made the decisions they made.
I've just got one other thing to say. If anybody happens to be near Aberdeen on the 23rd and 24th of September, I'll be speaking at the Wayward Literary Festival. I'm doing a workshop on Friday the 23rd and an author talk on Saturday the 24th, and tickets are free.
Yay!
And it's at wayward.com.
Wayward.com. Lovely. I'll definitely link to that as well. Fabulous. So Helen, just one more time, if listeners want to support you, it's just best to go to unbound.com.
Unbound.com and search for Helen Taylor.
Fabulous.
And find me.
Lovely. Helen, thank you so much for your time. Good luck with the crowdfunding. I'm sure it will come together. I have no doubts about it at all. And I look forward to reading the book.
Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Pleasure.
If you're a first-time novelist who is struggling to either finish your novel or get those revisions to where you want them to be, then I've got just the thing for you. I have a small group coaching program which runs over 12 months, and over the course of that program I will help you fix those plot problems that you've been struggling with. I'll help you get under the surface of your characters so you really get to know them and what's driving them. And crucially for you, I give you that self-belief that you need to get you through the roller coaster that is writing a novel, so that you can carry on, get to the end and get your book, your story out into the world so it can change people's lives. If that sounds good to you, if that is something that you'd be interested in doing, I know I can help you get to where you want to be. So book a call with me. Let's have a chat and see if we are a good fit for each other. If you're interested in doing that, then go to emmadesi.com/story builder. I look forward to chatting. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found that helpful and inspirational. Now, don't forget to come on over to Facebook and join my group, Turning Readers into Writers. It is especially for you if you are a beginner writer who is looking to write their first novel. If you join the group, you will also find a free cheat sheet there called 3 Secret Hacks to Write with Consistency. So go to emmadesi.com/turning readers into writers, hit join, can't wait to see you in there. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.